Hey, it's Keith from Outlaw Speed Shop, and this week I am tackling yet another bone shaker. This one's got a little twist on it. It was sent by a subscriber named Riley, and he sent me some dual wheels to go with it. That was one of his parameters, was dual wheels and some form of a greenish color if I could. And the rest was up to me, and I like those kind of builds. So that's what this one is, and I'm going to try to do this one a little bit different. I'm going to morph it with this Matchbox truck, and I did something similar to this before with the reverse effect, so we'll see what happens. If you like what you see, make sure you subscribe, and hopefully you get some inspiration out of this, and don't forget to ring the bell to get notified of all future videos. I started by taking everything apart. I didn't want to bore anybody with it, so the whole point of this one I thought was be kind of cool to take the grill, because I'm not a fan of, even though I've done quite a few of them, of the actual skull on the bone shaker. So I'm taking the grill shell, I cut it off the Matchbox, and I'm going to cut the hood off of the bone shaker, which kind of sucks a little bit because you end up cutting the front post off. Excuse me, but that's not going to end up being an issue. The coping saw here, jeweler's saw, whatever you want to call it, works very, very well. I'm actually probably putting too much pressure on it, but I didn't break a blade, so that's good. I had to cut all of it off, so there's usually obviously a bar that would go across the front, and I just left it wide open because there's a lot of fitting on this, and the piece was really thin, so I just went ahead and cut it off. But I decided I like the interior of the Matchbox as well. The problem is it's too wide. Not by much though. So surprisingly, I was able to take and grind off each side little by little until it fit just right. The big thing was on this whole project was when you're trying to get two vehicles to kind of mate up, nothing ever goes as planned, and there's always going to be some modifications and cutting and so on and so forth. Excuse me. So initially I was going to use the chassis also for the Matchbox truck, and that way it would mate up with the interior perfect. I would have, everything would be smooth. The back end was too long. And then the front end worked, but the back end didn't. And I ended up swapping and using the chassis and engine from the Matchbox. I'm sorry, the interior piece. So the interior and the engine from the Matchbox, but the chassis from the bone shaker. And by trimming and grinding off a little bit of the inside on each side where the door panels would go, I got it. It's very snug. You'll see it's kind of a pain in the ass to get in and out, but it is snug and it's perfect. But I didn't like the back, so I'm going to end up morphing that as well. So I'm cutting the back off of the Matchbox interior, and I'm going to cut the back off the bone shaker interior and use that one instead. So that way it's kind of a morph of both. And again, this is a lot of trial and error. I probably spent more time trying to fit than I did anything else. So right there you see I've got the bone shaker base, and all I had to do was cut almost up to where the post would go, and it worked perfectly, and it had plenty of clearance for the grill shell and the radiator. So here you can see I'm kind of looking, where do I need to cut the bone shaker interior. So the dually wheels, and I want this thing to have a killer stance, and I want those back tires really just to stick up. So the original spot, you can see I have them in now, it's just it gives it way too much of a rake. I wanted those tires sticking up taller and the body lower. So the only way I could do that was to move up where I mounted the wheels. So the first thing I'm going to do is cut the bottom of these protectors off, or the faux disc brake plastic pieces. That allows the chassis to sit lower, and by raising the wheels up, With the radius of the wheels, nothing's dragging on the ground. But those are easy to do. You can use a saw. I use the cutoff wheel. I kind of bounce back and forth. Whatever tool happens to be handy at the moment. There's no rhyme or reason to what I use or why I use it. I just do what feels right, because it's all about how I feel. So you can see right here I'm kind of piecing things together, and with that back piece from the Boneshaker in there with the gas tank, that's where I'm going to mount my brass tubing for my axles. So it's going to work out really well. I'm going to end up raising it. I think it worked out to be a little under 1/4 inch. So let's call it 3/16 is what I had to go up. And but it worked out good. It allowed me to kind of assemble this a lot easier by putting the axle tubes into the actual interior instead of on the base. So here I'm just taking a piece of I believe this, I couldn't use 1/16. These wheels are often I think it was off an M2 is what he said, so they're a little bit thicker diameter, so I think I'm using a 3/16 brass tubing. You can cut this with just about anything. They actually sell little tubing cutters, K&S does, but I'm going to use my cutoff whiz wheel because it happens to be handy. Don't do this at home. I'm actually just grinding it, filing it smooth right there with my fingers. Not recommended for children under the age of 18. I have to put a disclaimer in there. So I'm going to end up cutting a few grooves in that so I can apply my glue. The one issue, if I had to do this project over again, was because these M2, they roll great. The problem is it's a fixed axle. So the axle is designed to turn, not the wheels. But because they weren't wide enough and I had to cut the axle, there was no way for me to do anything with it. So unfortunately, the front wheels are movable, the back wheels are not, and I hate that. That bothers the hell out of me, but I didn't really have a choice. I couldn't make it any other way with the space and with what I had to work with. So I'm doing the same thing on the front as well. I'm going to groove that out. The issue of not having that bar across where the firewall would go, I'm marking it right there just so I have my height, so I know what I need for a depth, and it worked out good. I have my 1/8 square tubing. It's hard to see this with this new mat that I have. It's setting my camera focus into a tizzy, but I'm going to glue that in, and that's going to be my firewall, or the top of my firewall, so it fills that gap in. And you can see right here how I mounted the brass into the actual interior. I'm going to mark out the insides of the headers, the zoomies. I'm going to drill those out, and then I'm just going to bore a little hole, more of a recess, I guess you could say, into the end, so when I highlight it with black, it'll stand out and it's not just a flat piece. I think I'm using the 1/8, same one I use on the when I drill and tap. So after stripping it, obviously I have to wire brush it. So I do all my fitting and all my screwing around with trying to get things to work first. Then I'll go over it with my wire wheel and do my sanding and body finishing. The Boneshakers have casting lines on the back. They're pretty fugly. So I'm going to end up taking those off. The combination of my file and the sanding sticks, just to smooth that out, because it always bothered me, and I don't think I've done that on my other 2 or 3 that I've done on the channel, and this will be the last one for a long time. I got my little cup of mineral spirits, and I had it soaking, and I'm just going to wipe it off, and it's going to be ready for primer. I prime the interior white as well as the chassis and the gas tank. Makes it easy to paint. The only issue I have with this Matchbox motor, it's a great flathead motor, but there's really nothing on top because it had the hood. So I found on a ground pounder, an M2 ground pounder, I found a blower scoop, and I'm going to put that on there. It's got a little tab, 2 tabs front and back, and I thought it would be good for locating and being able to glue it down. So I'm just going to drill a small hole in the actual top of the motor which was pretty much flat anyways. And that'll be my locating hole for when I put the blower motor on. And it pretty much just snaps right in. You can see right there now it sits nice and flush. And it was kind of cool because it already had the green butterflies on it, and the truck's going to be green. So everything's primed, ready to go. I actually bought this Testors. I saw it at Hobby Lobby, and it looked cool. Lime ice. And I didn't really realize what this was. I just looked at the cap. It's got a huge, heavy metal flake in it, which was kind of cool. As you're spraying it, the metal flakes flying everywhere. And like I said, I usually use an airbrush, so it's kind of cool just to use spray cans once in a while. It's less cleanup. But I want the interior to match. So anything that would have been steel, like the console, the dash, and then behind the seats, I painted the same color. I'm doing the gas tank in a steel gray, which is lead belcher from Citadel. And then I highlight the straps and the cap with my chrome pen. Got my markers here. I'm going to start detailing what I can with my markers. I think it was Austin over Diecast Resurrection and mentioned the Gundam markers a while ago. So I picked some up, and they are awesome. So I'm using some Citadel Abaddon Black for the grill shell because it dries a nice flat black. And then I'll dry brush some silver on it to highlight the ridges. Then I'm using some gel pens I use everything. I use Testors paint, Citadel paints. This is Model Masters transparent stuff for the marker lights. I use the markers, I use pens, I use Sharpies. I use whatever I need to use to do what I need to do. There's no one tool or one go-to thing that I use all the time. I use all of them all the time just because certain limitations. So it helps to have a good arsenal of tools to do what you need to do. So the transparent, I think that's Model Masters yellow. It's like turn signal yellow and amber red. They got a semi-transparent to them, so it's nice. This stuff I'm showing it, but I end up taking it off. I didn't do it right. This stuff works awesome. It's Tamiya transparent blue in like a orangey yellow, and it's supposed to kind of like highlight the headers that they've been burned, like, you know, they get hot and stuff like that, the discoloration. So I screwed it up, so I just re-chromed over it afterwards. So but everything's all detailed, and I think it came out really good. Before I go too much further, I'd like to as always, I'd like to give a shout out to my Patreon members: Chris Smith, Joey Williams, Kristen Stanalan, Stephen Mance, William Robinson, Ed Ostrander, Devil's Details Diecast, Matchbox Garage, Alvarez's Diecast Customs, Jim Silva, one-time pledges from Chris Stanifer, Aaron Connard, and Mad Max 454. The ones with the YouTube links, icons are linked down below. Please check them out. Actually, one of my next videos is from a Halloween build sponsored by Devil's Details Diecast, so that's coming out next Wednesday. It'll be pretty cool. This is what I started with, and this is what I ended up with. I think it came out pretty cool. I love the stance. I love how the back wheels hit the top of the where the bed is. I like the blower on top. I like the white walls, and I actually just everything I like. I hope Riley likes it. I think it came out really cool. I love it. But that's about it. If this is something that you guys like and want to see more of, let me know. I really enjoy the customs and muscle cars. I don't really get into the import stuff like I know a lot of people do. So I want to appreciate you guys watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.